This is Shawn Dutton with Prepared Times Magazine. We're interviewing Thornton Barnes today on his book, EMP. Thornton worked 10 years with the U.S. Army, served in Korea as an intelligence specialist. After being discharged from the Army, he worked at the NASA High Range Tracking Station in Beatty, Nevada. He participated in the operation of the X-15 and XB-70, YF-12, and the SR-71 Blackbird. Worked with the Apollo space capsule and CIA special projects at Groom Lake. In 1970, he formed a family oil and gas exploration company and served 18 years as president and CEO, employing more than 56 employees. Owner and CEO of Startel Incorporated. In 1976, he was a Republican delegate at the Oklahoma Presidential Convention and was delegated in 1984 at the Colorado Presidential Convention. Anything else you want to add to that, Thornton?
No, that's enough.
You've done so much stuff, it'd take like an hour just to read it all out.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was always in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a big fan of yours since about 2007 when I saw some of your websites and some of the information you put up, and I thought, wow, this guy, he's got a pretty exciting career and a pretty exciting background.
Yeah, what is really neat, Shawn, is we're able to now talk about it. In fact, we have been participating with particularly with the CIA, for getting the story out of what we did. That's really the purpose of what we're talking about and all, because back then we did not take notes, we didn't keep records, and the new generation, when they started declassifying the programs, they didn't know what we did. So I've had the privilege of working with the historians at the CIA and places we can't mention as we record what went on back during these programs that we're talking about.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of the SR-71 Blackbird too, and there's so much stuff that comes out of Area 51. You can't really put it all together as what really went on out there. You put together a book called EMP, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And what was the reason for picking the topic EMP?
This is a subject that for a long time I've been conscious that the public and no one is really concerned. Very few people even know what an EMP is, much less what it would do. And I think there is a time when we are going to see a terrorist attack using EMP methods, and the reason for the book was more to stir up awareness that, hey, we got a problem, and we need to be talking about it, thinking about it, and preparing for it.
There's some experts that think that a cyber warfare or something like that's going to be the electronic Pearl Harbor that takes place in the United States, and the EMP could also be added into that. I think a cyber warfare and EMP tech is more like electronic warfare. I think they'd classify that under.
Yeah, it's a different war. You're not going in and shooting people. They don't even see it coming. And like an EMP attack, it could occur. It doesn't have to be a satellite like I use in my book. It could be brought in on a rusty old tanker into any of our cities and set that thing off, and they'd be back in 1500s as far as technology. No electricity, nothing would work. And just imagine, with no electricity, you can't pump water, you're not flushing your toilets, you don't have food, you can't, it wipes out your vehicle, so you don't have delivery, so you got a real problem.
Yeah, some of the people at Homeland Security that I've talked to and some of the law enforcement, they say that, it's not a matter of if they use these kind of weapons on it, it's just a matter of time before something like this happens.
Oh, this is absolutely true. It will happen. I don't know. I try to paint in the EMP a worst-case scenario where it's a major company that has prepared, and I'm sure that these preparations have been made. I think that part of it's real. Whether someone will push the button or not on a global nature is unknown, but we will have terrorists. We will have someone like North Korea or possibly Iran, or someone will launch it. All they got to do is launch a nuclear warhead on a missile, set it off, and and they've created an EMP attack that will literally wipe out. It could wipe out an entire nation or even a continent of everything that they're used to. Because the thing about an EMP, it's not like it's more like a radio wave. Once it got into your electrical system, it's going to follow those wires wherever they go, and if they go all the way to South America, that's where it's going to go, even though the attack may be over Canada.
I remember when I did security up at the Denver Tech Center, they were saying that an EMP fiber optics isn't affected by an EMP. So all the new wiring and everything in all the buildings up in Denver, they're pretty stringent on making them put in fiber optics and things like that. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, they are slowly making some changes, but was unfortunately your major power companies and stuff are not protecting our electrical power distribution like they should. And the thing about it, we're going with all this micro technology now. Like your car, you've got now you got a device sitting in your pocket, and it's automatic. Well, EMP attack, none of that is protected. It would wipe out all your modern cars. If they got any electronics at all, your battery still be okay. It won't bother your battery, but you don't have anything else that works, so it's useless.
And I was talking to some Homeland Security experts that were saying if you happen to be, near ground zero when one of these bombs go off that causes an EMP, you might want to try several different cars. Eventually, you might find a car that's running, and then you'll be able to get out of the area because of the fallout and things like that come afterwards. Not just the EMP itself, but there's a lot of other things that can happen with a nuclear weapon or a backpack nuke. There's a lot of talk about those nowadays.
Yeah, it won't take out all the cars. There will be some, if they're protected and they're parked in a certain way that they're shielded from this, the wave, we'll call it a wave, they will escape. The thing that you really going to have to escape is people, because I'm living outskirts of Las Vegas. We got 2 million people. All of a sudden, they're not going to have any food. They're not going to have water. They're not going to know what happened. They won't have internet, radio, television. It's going to be a very desperate situation. So your preparedness is one of the first things you got to do is get away from population.
A few organizations out there with family preparedness that talk about Faraday cages. Do you know anything about those?
Right. Yes. That's real simple to protect against EMP. Faraday cages is the best way. It's just you can have them for your computers or just about anything. If it's shielded, it's not going to be hit. But just being in a building or even in a bunker is not going to protect you. You got to have that metal casing around all the electronics. And if you got one little antenna sticking out, it's going to pick up the signal and it's still going to wipe you out.
Yeah, and an EMP attack could linger on for years until they get everything working again, or it could be, maybe a lifetime. I remember after 911, they took the show Dark Angel off the air because that was based on an EMP attack and how life after an EMP attack, in a big city like Seattle is where they filmed that. I'm not sure if that was really the reason they took it off, but that was the reason they came up with it. They took that off the air because they didn't want to scare people after 911. And that's another big thing that Homeland Security talks about is if you set off one device, the other cities are going to panic because they're going to think they're next.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to cause, actually a worldwide panic. Everybody's going to be scared. And in my book, I go a little bit overboard of through the panic effect. The nations start using their nuclear capability just to more or less intimidate other nations from messing with them because everybody's scared to death of what's going to happen. And,
I like that part of your book.
Kind of a chain effect. They're, everybody's making their mark. Hey, don't mess with me. I've got nukes. And they set a few off to demonstrate that. That's a little far-fetched, but I was really trying to show how long-lasting it would be, and just how bad it would be.
Yeah, and another thing you talk about in your book is that some kind of a missile starts coming apart in stages, and instead of running for shelter, everyone runs to take pictures. And I think that's just so true of what happens with a lot of these disasters nowadays. Even with the Boston bombing, people started looting the vendors out there and started trying on some of the clothing before they stole it. and people don't realize that you can't stand and take pictures of stuff like this. You need to seek shelter or something like that. I really like that part of your book also.
Yeah, I think this is true. People, they just ordinary people have no idea the dangers of something like this, and they say, "Wow, look at that!" And they start taking pictures and putting on Facebook and Twitter and all that sort of thing when they need to be, finding, seeking cover, because the people are just not educated today. Back in our younger days, we'd gone through the Korean War and even World War II and different ones. So we had more military thinking people, but now you got 1% of our people ever served in the military. So 99% they don't even think about that sort of thing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk nowadays about all the, especially Vietnam vets. I think there's something like 500,000 that are going to end up on permanent disability, getting $12,000 a year, which is not even minimum wage nowadays. And it's just sad to see that the military that have fought in a lot of these wars that are, they're not getting the kind of care and treatment they deserve either.
Yeah, the military always take a lick. That's one of the first ones the government hits when they're going to. For example, when we deployed to Germany, this is during the Eisenhower administration, the United States was spending too much money overseas, so they're going to cut back on foreign spending. The first thing they did was cut military dependent travel, where you couldn't take your families with you, and so that was going to save the nation. And yet, I was able to take my family with me because that's kind of another story, but she had the only family on an American troop ship as we went to Germany. But you got over there, you got Ford Motor Company and all these companies, big corporations, they're still operating, they're still spending money over there. So, they picked on the military because they're easy to pick on. They don't make a stink because they can't. They're non-political, and you got the chain of command and what have you, so they just have to take it.
Also, in your book, you're talking about some phone lines are working and stuff, that the military bases would be overwhelmed with phone calls, that people would be scared, and they tie up all the lines, not only with the police and fire, but tie up some of the lines at the military bases as to trying to get information.
Yes, you can imagine. You can imagine the panic and what would happen on something like that. And then, of course, you would lose a lot of your telephone, their communications, what have you, too. So that would be something that some would work and some would not. So people would be panicked because all of a sudden they wake up one morning, and that's the thing. They wake up one morning and nothing's working. They don't know when that bomb went off. It went off in the atmosphere, and it wiped out everything in less than a second. And they wake up the next morning, the clock's not working, the TV doesn't come on. They go in and turn on the water. There's no water, and then they try to get on the internet. There's no internet. What happened? And they go outside in the house, see what's going on, and they can't make any phone calls. So, rumors start, and then it starts getting real messy.
Now, you also talk about the planes going down when there's an EMP attack, and how many casualties would happen with not only the people on the plane, but the planes hitting big cities on the ground. In your book, you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you would lose so many. They just start. A lot of planes will start falling in the sky. We're not hardening the electronics in many of the planes. Even the military is going a little bit slack on a lot of that. They tried to, but they do have systems that would not work. And but yes, it was why you'd have airliners, private planes, everything would be crashing into the cities and just crashing all over the world.
I think it would be scary even, a year after an EMP attack to get in a big airliner because of all the wiring and stuff, and think that they've actually fixed, worked out all the bugs after an EMP attack to where it's safe to fly.
Yeah, and what's going to be bad, Shawn, is how are they going to recover? Because your factories are shut down. You don't have the first thing you're going to have to do is rebuild your electrical systems. And, how are you going to build transformers when you don't have electricity to run the machines to build them? That sort of thing. You're just kind of starting over on everything. But the first thing you got to do is recover their electrical power, because everything, we depended on that sort of thing now for our livelihood, and it's just a way of life.
And also getting the techs out in the field, if none of their vehicles are running and stuff, then that's going to tie up even more time as to how you're going to get them out there unless you actually walk them out with backpacks to fix some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. It's just mind-boggling because you say, hey, jump in the truck and go out and fix this. What truck? We don't have any trucks that run. And, so it's just kind of domino effect. It just, and things go worse. And then take care of the people in the city. So that's what will really be the big one because, you're going to have people dipping out of their swimming pools for drinking water. And they're 3 or 4 days, and the food starts going bad in their deep freezers and refrigerators, and then they realize, we've got a problem. Where we're going to find food? Well, the grocery stores have already been looted by the gangs of people that, because you got to face it, every city has got people that has never had a job, and they just live off the public anyway. And the first thing they're going to do is they go give me my stuff, and they're going to be taking over all the grocery stores and stuff, so there won't be any food left, and they got no deliveries. So the cities have got a major problem.
Do you think it's possible that the United States can prevent an EMP attack, or it's just inevitable that someday it'll happen, and it's just a matter of how much money and time they're willing to put into bringing up the infrastructure as quickly as possible?
I don't think there's any way they can prevent it. It may be, like you mentioned, a backpack attack, or even that, it would be devastating to even a major city. And that's something that they've just got to prevent the people from getting their hands on the stuff to start with. And some of these little rogue countries, that we got no control over them. Even like I hate to start naming countries, but even Pakistan, they got nukes. And how secure are they? We don't know, and that's something we do not really have control over. So some little country like that, they get their hands on the nukes, and they put them on a freighter or something, and they bring them to the United States or wherever they want to attack, and then it's all over.
And one thing you mentioned in your book that I thought about too is that at the hospitals, if all the power goes down at the hospitals and you can't get your techs there to bring the generators back, online and all that kind of stuff, that you could lose 870,000 people at the hospitals, within a week or so that are on life support and oxygen and things like that.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, you lose all that sort of thing, and if the generators don't work, now a lot of them are going to hardened generators, and I think that's one of the that is something that we need to be concentrating on, is making sure that we got generators, so that that way we could. But then you got a problem too, where you're going to get your fuel for the generators. Eventually, you're going to run out of fuel because your refineries aren't working. So you got a problem there. You'd last for a while, but then things keep degrading a year from after the attack. You'd be in worse shape than you were the day after the attack.
Yeah, and even if you had one of the only vehicles that was running out there, I'm sure the police or fire would confiscate it if they seen that there was a moving vehicle out there. They'd probably take it away from you and say, we need this for an emergency situation.
Oh, yeah, they would. They'd have to control it. That's one of the things that they'd have to declare martial law everywhere, because you would have people fighting in the streets. It just would not be pretty. And like people preparing for something like this, and they store up a 2 or 3 year supply of stuff. Well, they're going to be a target. People are going to be after them. I mean, they just might as well wave a flag and say, "Come get me." And there's no way that you can defend yourself, because they'll get their hands on military grade weapons. You'll have 20 or 30 or 50 people around circling your house and shooting through it and everything. And eventually, they're going to get you. So even stockpiling stuff is not the answer.
Yeah, a lot of the preppers are worried nowadays that they'll go house to house like they did in Boston, and they'll just confiscate whatever they need. And there's been a lot of talk around northern Arizona where the police are going to confiscate any extra supplies that you have to give to people that don't have it. So even if you do have a large supply, like you say, you're going to have to really bunker down and guard it with your life to keep it from not only like motorcycle gangs and stuff out there that are already heavily armed and probably will be going crazy and something like that. But even the government may want to take it away from you.
Yeah, can you imagine that little, in my book I'm talking, I have this happening in Beatty, Nevada, which is a little small town of 400 people or so, and I picked it because I lived there a number of years while I was on the X-15 range. But they're on the only road from Las Vegas and even in California that goes up to Reno and places like that. So people escaping Las Vegas are going to make it to the little town of Beatty. They're going to need to fuel up the gasoline, and nothing works. They can't. There's no service stations. So suddenly you're going to have a little 400, and you can imagine what will happen there because these people are hungry, they're thirsty, they got their kids with them, and it's going to be terrible.
Yeah, the CERT teams up here in northern Arizona estimate that 750,000 people will try to evacuate on I-40 from California if something happens up there, like an EMP attack or the big earthquake they've always talked about. And what they're actually planning to do with the CERT teams and the local police and Needles and Bullhead and stuff is they're going to block off I-40 and direct people from California toward the bigger cities where they won't eat up all the resources in these small towns. They're going to send people to Phoenix and Las Vegas, and you can imagine 750,000 people on the road all at one time. The chaos and nonsense that goes on with that would be just, incredibly insane.
Yeah, just imagine they're heading Las Vegas. Las Vegas people are trying to get out and go somewhere else. So, it's going to add to it. So you're just going to have what vehicles that are running. They'll be probably your older vehicles. They'll be breaking down on the side of the road. No one's going to pick you up. You're particularly out here in this hot desert. You're going to last 4 or 5 hours, and you're gone. So heat stroke. So it's just going to be ungodly, such a mess. And then, of course, in my book, I have people, jumping out of the hotels on the strip, and the bodies are just piling up because there's no one. Everybody's looking out for themselves, and they're certainly not going to go out and start picking up people and having funerals and that sort of thing. So it's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, it's so mind-boggling you can't even think of it all. And I go out and talk to people all the time about being prepared and getting these bug-out bags together and things like that. And I'd say about 90% of the people say that they plan on staying home till things get bad, and then they'll just kill themselves. So suicide, during something like this is also just mind-boggling. And it weakens the country once you start losing more of your population rapidly like that.
Yeah, and you would. People would be so desperate, and the water is going to be the thing. Because I concentrate on the water because I'm in the desert, and you've got to have it, and it's just it's not that readily available. There's no stock ponds out in the countryside like you'd have in the Midwest. You'd always find a stock pond or a creek or something, but we don't have them out here in the West, but we got the people. So it's going to particularly hit us hard if something like this happens.
Yeah, water's a big problem in prepping because even in your bug-out bag, water's heavy. It's hard to take with you. It's and then if you're going to bug out or move somewhere, you're going to have to move to where there's a water source where you can resupply your water constantly. A lot of people up here are talking about bartering with their well water, and they tell you if you come up here and you want water, at least bring us some propane or something that we can run our backup system off of to get the water out of the ground. So water's like one of the number one things people are concerned about in a disaster. And I think an EMP attack, you're going to have people even, depending on what kind of explosion or whatever, that are burned and the radiation, and then you're going to have the fallout and everything that goes with that. You talk a little bit about a big fire that kicks off in California and blackens the sky after the EMP attack in your book.
Yeah, actually the attack in California was actually a nuclear bomb. It set off the fire storms in California, and they just feed because the EMP attack takes out damages your ozone layer. So you've got the sun that's all of a sudden a big element too, because you got all that the heat and stuff from the sun getting through the atmosphere, and then the fires feed that. So even that, the fires and all that, just adds to the effect.
And then in your book, you're talking about the people that have bunkered down inside Jackass Flats, and they're in a big cave or some kind of military complex that they've taken over, and they need to really organize fast because with the sun blackened out like that, they can't decide when it's night and when it's day. So they want to have morning briefings. So even though it's night all the time, they've figured out a time when they can say, well, this is the morning briefing and things like that.
Yeah, that I don't know if you've ever been to Yucca Mountain or not. That facility actually exists. I've had a tour of it and stuff. We got miles and miles of underground tunnel there that they had planned to put nuclear waste, and it would be the perfect location for something like this. And they do have the water there. They've already drilled the well, so this does. What I use in my book does exist. I try to keep it as realistic as possible as far as the equipment they use, the facilities, what they go through, but they'd be underground. And, like I even bring up the matter of them not seeing sunlight. Well, that starts having an effect on the body, your vitamin D and that sort of thing. So you have to dress that sort of thing too. But I compared the living in the tunnel to, you might say, future space travel, where generations are on a spaceship, going somewhere. It's not just a couple of years; it's several generations to get there, and they've got to live together. They've got to be compatible. So you got to screen the people. And what was sad in my book is, this cold chills, but we had to screen the people that they were going to even let go into the tunnel. And if he's over a certain age, no use. The elderly, they had no use for them, because whoever they're going to keep, they're going to have to depend on them to repopulate the world, you might say. And but then you were screening out anyone with chronic diseases or anything like that. So if they you couldn't care for them. You didn't have hospitals and stuff, so people had to be healthy to start with. And once you became a liability, that's something that the people might have to shove you out the door, you might say, because they just didn't have the means of caring for people that was not able to take care of themselves.
Yeah, around 1984, when I was in Denver, they installed some doomsday computers in all the local hospitals there. I think they have about 56 hospitals in the Denver metro area at that time. And what these computers were going to do was figure out which patients serve a military purpose and which patients don't. And after a big disaster, they were going to surround the hospitals with the National Guard, and they'd actually tell people that, you don't serve any purpose to the America, so you're going to be sent away from the hospitals and stuff. They don't even want to waste any of the resources on you. So, that from a survival point of view, that's pretty scary.
It is. They'd have to, though. And that's what is so scary. That would be so difficult, because we don't even think that way, and you just have to totally change your way of thinking, because what are you going to do? Even in the people the survivors, they started reproducing, and they had a kid that was mentally handicapped. What are you going to do with him? You have very limited facilities and limited amount of food. That's a hard decision, and I didn't go there because that's something that's just unthinkable. But the problems that they would have, the survivors, and then thinking about it, I didn't go this far in the book. I'll probably do a sequel to this, because it's something that I'm really interested in. But I can see where a farming community, you'd have all kind of raiders and stuff coming in attacking the farm. So the military, in order for them to survive, they would probably want to make a partnership with the farming community and say, we'll protect you so that you can grow the food and livestock and what have you, and you feed us. So they'd have to have a partnership. And that's that way they could survive, because the farmers would not be able to survive otherwise. They need the military, and the military needs them.
Do you think the military is adequately addressing the survival of an EMP, the military by itself?
Yes. They're not getting the funding. They are concerned. They do have a commission on it, and I use the DIA because I know some people in DIA. In fact, I gave a presentation at the Defense Intelligence Agency about 2 years ago. I took a group of us from we all worked out at Area 51, and we went back and we spent 10 days doing nothing but going to the different intelligence agencies. And like CIA, we did 2 at CIA, one in the bubble, and then we were there for Family Day and doing autographs and stuff. But we went to all these agencies, and we gave talks, and I even gave a talk on the House and the Senate while I was back there. So, yes, they are concerned whether or not they can get the funding, the interest. It hasn't happened yet. But they're not educating the people, and that's something that they just don't want to do it in the schools or anything like that. It's they need to get the word out. And take precautions.
And another thing I love about your book is you go into a lot of detail about the group dynamics, the survival group dynamics of the people that took shelter in Yucca Mountain, and they start a calisthenic program, and then you got the kids that are at this shelter, and they go to their parents and say some of the other kids are bullying them, and you go into a little bit of detail about all the problems that a group like that might encounter.
Yeah, it is. The more I thought about you, and they would, and not just in that environment. Even going back to space travel, you'd have the same thing. You'd have to have you wouldn't have democracy like we enjoy it. It would have to be so many laws and restrictions and stuff, and they had in a closed society like that, and they had the same thing in my book in the tunnel. They had and it wasn't something that they forced on people. They had to make the people want to do it.
And you talk a little bit about Dr. Zimbardo's experiment and how that might affect the command structure of the people in Yucca Mountain. And I thought that was pretty fascinating part of your book also.
Yeah, that was an interesting experiment. And that is so true, too. That's I did quite a bit of research on the human. And of course, I've seen some of it too. I've been trained on a lot of this stuff, and the human nature is just something that's it's a mystery. When I went through officer training school at Fort Sill, of course they harass the people. They're in your face, and what they do is break you down and they rebuild you in the ways of the Army, you might say. I saw guys just literally crack up over nothing. I mean, to me, it's hilarious. I think, God, that's pretty neat. But it's just human nature. Some people can't take even verbal abuse. It just blows their mind. And that's how they screened them out. We wiped out a lot of the candidates because they just couldn't hack it. And so you're gonna have that human. That's just human nature.
Yeah, I seen a little bit of that when I worked for the Arizona Department of Corrections. I used to train people, some of the new officers out of the academy, in emergency management, and they'd have to be the incident commander if they came across an inmate that was stabbed or something like that. And some of them just can't do it. They break down, start crying, and they just tell you, I can't do it.
Yeah, that's it. It is, exactly. And you've got to call those people out because they're the ones that you certainly do not want those in your leadership because they've got to be strong when under fire or whatever. So you do have to call them out, and that was the purpose of what we did in OCS. But it just amazed me because I just wasn't that way. So I wasn't being in my face, calling me all kind of names of this and that, and I said, God, that's pretty neat. I'll have to remember that, and so I can use it. I just had a different attitude. Other people took it personally and just couldn't handle it.
Another thing you talk about in your book is the community in Yucca Mountain where they after a while they get together and they think, maybe we should start cross-training these people to where they don't just do one thing at a time. They are trained also in each person needs to be cross-trained in weapons and in self-defense and gardening and all that kind of thing. I think that was pretty fascinating about your book.
Yeah, they would have to. You think about that because eventually they're going to come out of that mountain and they're going to start farming and stuff. So you got scientists in there. They were nuclear scientists, for example, or something, and they got to learn how to farm. And by the same token, a farmer's got to know how to pick up a Stinger missile and use it. So they cross train back and forth, and I tried to emphasize that they had to be military thinking. However, they didn't want to become where that's all they were was military. So in the book, I have them eventually. One night a week they had to dress like civilians and act like civilians, so they would not lose that culture of. Hopefully someday they'd go back to being civilians.
Now, I didn't really follow this part of your book, but did all these people that ended up at Yucca Mountain, did they plan this out in advance, or they just thought, this might be a good place to go, and they actually met up at Yucca Mountain?
No, they'd actually planned it. It was planned. That's one thing about Nevada. We do have I used our National Guard, Nevada's National Guard, because they are trained. They're specialists in first responder stuff. We got the training ground here at the UP, the Atomic Test Range. Well, that's where they train all your Homeland Security people, your first responders from all over the world. They bring them in from Israel and different places. It's a training ground. So it's natural to have this occurring here in Nevada because our National Guard are trained. They're actually trained for civilian interface, like in Afghanistan or, nation rebuilding. That's what they're trained for. And so we had the qualified people here, so I used them in the book. Just naturally, that's who they would want to have in a situation like this because they know what to do. They're already specialists at it. If they've served in Iraq and Afghanistan, doing that very same thing, going into villages and rebuilding them and building bridges and this sort of thing. So that was the people that I used for my military in the book.
We got Grand Canyon Caverns up here in northern Arizona, and they built a big bomb shelter in there back in the 60s. I think it was for the missile Cuban crisis, and it's all the supplies and everything is still inside it. And they actually joke about they brought all the supplies and stuff and put it in this cavern, but they only brought one roll of toilet paper.
That's and you'll notice that was something in the book. I've always been the kind of stickler on logistics. That comes from military. We always plan how you're going to feed your people and this and that. So I even had bicycles coming in because they're going 5 miles of tunnel that they had to go through, and there's going to be a lot of walking. So they brought in, they brought in all these bicycles and stuff, and this bringing in these stuff that we've actually got a company here. I didn't use its name in the book, but they're planning. They're putting together these modules and stuff for colonies on the moon and Mars, and they've actually got them in orbit now. Some that they're testing, and they're working with NASA. Well, I bring in their equipment that they had and supplies they had planned to use on the moon, and I use them for the survival of the people in the tunnel. And it fit just in perfectly because this high-tech stuff. For example, medicines. They've come up with medicines that's got a very long shelf life, because they'd have to have it in a lunar colony. They just don't have pharmacists and stuff there. So they had all this sort of supplies. So it was pretty high-tech. But we really have these. I've did a tour at this company, and it's just amazing what they're doing for they're actually planning on their own private space station and everything, and actually they've contracted with NASA for the first human habitats on the moon and the Mars. So we do have that stuff here in Las Vegas. So most of the stuff that I brought to the tunnel in the book, we really have. People just don't know about it.
Yeah, I used to work security for Martin Marietta back in Denver, and they had a big Mars project going on up near Waterton Canyon, and the people that we talked to up there, it was just amazing, all the stuff that they would talk about. They actually they have a gated community up there now that works on some kind of Mars project with some of these big military companies. It's kind of fun to talk to people about things like that.
Oh, it is. Oh, yeah, it is. They're years ahead of our thinking. They're thinking ahead, and that's what this company here in Las Vegas. It's just amazing to go out there and see how they're building this stuff. I've actually been into the capsules that they're going to put on the moon, and that sort of thing, and it's very, very interesting. I just wish I was going to be able to go with them.
Yeah.
What an adventure that would be. But we do have that technology, and I worked on the Nerva project at Jackass Flats, so I'm familiar with Jackass Flats. Another reason I had my story occurring there, and I worked on the nuclear rocket engines that we actually built an engine, nuclear rocket engine, to go to Mars. We were planning on putting it on a Saturn V rocket, and I think it was going to take us 355 days, I think it was, to take a man to Mars. But we actually had a program going back in the 1960s for that purpose. We built the engine. It's ready to go right now, and they will eventually use it.
And I know when I took my academy at the Department of Corrections, they were talking about, what good comes out of corrections and things like that. And one of the instructors was saying that actually there is something good that comes out of all this, and it gets people used to living and working and supervising people in small quarters, because prisons are really confined, and those inmates spend their entire day in an area the size of a parking space, and not all of them get out, but a lot of them get out, and they're breeding that into society. And even people working in cubicles and things, that you can work and live and function in really small enclosed areas.
Yeah, that's a world that the ordinary person has never encountered. But when I talked about the selection, when they selected us to work out at Area 51, I was with the 23-man special projects team. The CIA was put together. We were with all trades. I was electronics. We had guys, even had draftsmen. But we had just about anything that you'd need for a project. And but they screened us. They screened the families as well, because they didn't want a wife that was an alcoholic, or because we all had top secret clearances, and they didn't want a wife that's going to go crying to the congressman. I never sees my husband. Don't know what he's doing. Because we'd leave on Monday morning, come home Friday night, and the wives didn't know. Well, when they declassified it, they brought us back to CIA headquarters in 2007, and that's when my wife found out where I worked and what I did. And but we screened the people as well. And for example, each of one on my team, we either had a boat on Lake Mead, or we had a cabin on Mount Charleston, and we'd spend all week up there and planning our weekends. We had something in common that we could talk about. We couldn't talk about our work because we all did different things and had different customers. But we could talk. One thing we had in common, we all had boats or a cabin, and then we'd play together all weekend. We would plan all week for the weekend, and then we'd all head out to the cabin. Because we were pretty paranoid. We knew that the Russians had a lot of spies trying to figure out what we was doing. It was very security conscious about us and our families, so we didn't associate outside of our group. We worked together and we played together.
My dad was in the Air Force for 28 years out in Peterson Air Force Base and all those places, and he used to talk a bit about the things that was underground at NORAD. And I think one of the big things with NORAD is once they close that door, nobody's coming in and nobody's coming out. And they show that on the TV a lot, but during an EMP strike or any kind of attack on the United States, some of these big military installations, there's no way you're going to get in there to take shelter or anything else. But you think the Yucca Mountain community was more of an open thing to where people could show up there and get inside?
No, it was when they claimed the door shut, that was it. They wouldn't let anyone in, and certainly no one went out. And, in the book, I've got the motion detectors outside and the cameras and that sort of thing. But they, of course, in that case, they're afraid of all these refugees from the cities. And once they found out they had a supply of food there, there's just no way they could let them in. They couldn't handle them. So they closed the door, and that was it.
That's what the preppers call zombies, is the people that aren't prepared, and they're going to be out there just starving and looking for anything they can to survive.
And they're desperate, and as I say in my book, humans are the most dangerous thing in the world, even worse than a tiger or anything, when they get hungry and desperate, because they got intelligence, and they're going to figure out a way of getting it, so, I mean, they're really a predator when it gets down to it.
You think the civilian sector is addressing damage control or recovery from an EMP attack at all?
I don't think so. I don't think. I think you go out on the street and just ask someone what would they do if there's an EMP attack, and they say, "What's an EMP?" They don't know. They don't even have a clue, and nor do most people even care. You know, they don't. Well, that won't happen in my lifetime. Why do I care? You know. So it's a bad situation. I don't know how you'd ever. I don't think you could ever educate the people enough. I think you just have to prepare for a few survivors, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the preppers are doing now, is setting themselves up in 3- and 4-man groups, because you get better security that way, and you're going to have to close down your community and keep people out, looters and things like that.
You've got to, and you got to have groups. You can't do it by yourself. That's one thing I emphasize in the book is, don't go it alone. You've got to band together and be a force. The only way you can survive. Otherwise, they will overwhelm you, and you won't survive it. The human factor. You may survive the attack, but it's the humans that's going to get you.
And also in your book, you talk about the Yucca Mountain community. After a while, they figured out that they are going to want to go outside, and I think they came up with some kind of way to tell what the weather was outside, so they could decide if they were ready to go out or something like that.
Yeah, they actually. It got to the point that they go out and spend, just a few minutes. They were doing soil samples and started sampling, and this is when the fallout stopped. But the thing is, even once they was able to go outside, they knew that at any day the fallout could return, because it's just going, it's in the atmosphere, being blown about by the wind current. It may hang out over Canada or someplace for months at a time, but all of a sudden it comes back down, and you go right back into what I call the nuclear winter. You're back under cover, and this could go on for centuries. I mean, they might go 2 or 3 months and just everything's normal, and then all of a sudden this wind current, your high, atmospheric stuff, and all of a sudden it's back on them again. This may be 110 degrees, and all of a sudden it's snowing and fallout everywhere.
And another thing that in a community like that, such as the Yucca Mountain in the book, EMP, is a lot of the big fires, the forest fires and things like that, will go unchecked after a disaster like that, because there won't be anybody to put it out.
That's it, and then you've generated wind currents. And it's just going to spread. I mean, entire cities are going to burn. It's just hardly no end to it. And you're right. There's no one going to put them out. Your weather patterns have changed. You're not going to have the rain to come in and extinguish the fires. It's just the whole world has been upset, as we know it.
Do you think that a real attack would ever be as bad as what you depicted in your book, or do you think you exaggerated a little bit with your book?
Exaggerated. The nuclear part that are brought in might not would happen. It depends. But someone that wanted to say they wanted to take over some desperate country, just run out of space, for their people, and they want to take over another country, they do an EMP attack. It wipes out the people, but doesn't damage the buildings or anything. That stuff is not hurt. They just take out all the electricity. They have to rebuild all that. But they could just walk in, and everything is sitting just like it, because it doesn't. Unless the nuclear attack did wipe out the cities. It causes fire. EMP attack would not do that. It would just take out all your electricity, and basically that's it. And which would wipe out the civilization, because we depend on it, to a certain extent. There'll still be some survivors, of course.
It sounds a little like the neutron bomb that they were talking about in the 70s.
Actually, that's it. The neutron bomb. It's just, it takes out the people, but doesn't damage the infrastructure.
And with the EMP, it's kind of a little twist to that, because you leave the people there, and the people are going to cause such chaos that they're their own worst enemy. That's
it. Yeah, the bomb would have been more humane than the EMP, because the people are going to suffer. That's what's so bad about it, because they're not hurt physically. They just start starving and not having water and this sort of thing, and they become desperate. They become animals, and they do whatever they have to survive. And you got these gangs, you got these thugs and stuff in every city, and they're going to be fighting for territory. They're going to take over. The ordinary people won't have a chance against them. These guys got guns. They don't mind using them. And then in my book, the military had to turn loose a lot of their people. They just couldn't feed them. Well, these guys are trained, and the gangs, or I won't call them gangs, the warlords, they want these young soldiers. They're trained to fight, and they bring them in because there's no way they can return to their homes. The military just turns them loose out on society, and where they're going to go, and they're going to end up with a band of outlaws, and just adds to it because they got the skills, and they bring with them a lot of the weapons and stuff that they need. So you got military grade weapons in the hands of civilians, and they know how to use them.
Yeah, the book's fascinating about not only an EMP attack and the community they set up, and all the things that go into that, but it gets you thinking about other things that are going to take place during an EMP attack, and what you need to do to even try to get ready for something like that. What would you suggest to a prepper if they were going to put a little bit of supplies in their home to get ready for an EMP attack?
I think I would have, I would be thinking of where I want to go if there's an EMP attack, and I think that's where I would want my stash of food and survival gear and all would be at wherever I was going to end up spending my time. The home would not be the place for it. First of all, in your home, even if you had all this stuff, if your car doesn't run, you're stuck. You're there. So you'd want to be able to have a means of getting to where you got your stash. But I would have the stash in some mine shaft or something or other someplace, and have a group, or be organized. Have a group who all, and that's it. And all of them show up there, and they got their defenses, they got their weapons that they're going to use to defend themselves. Everything is already at the destination.
And the thing with preppers is there's 3 million people that are classified as prepper nowadays, but most of them have the wrong supplies and all the wrong stuff. They're putting together these zombie apocalypse bags like you see on TV. I went to a militia meeting the other day where this guy had on this old Civil War sword, and he was walking around like he's ready for a zombie apocalypse. And I thought, that's pretty sad.
It is. That is. It is. You got to be a little smarter than that. It's you got to have a source of food, and you don't run out of food, so you want to be where you can regenerate food of some kind. And same way with have a supply of protected water, a spring or something that's not contaminated. So there's a lot to consider on it, and the people that's not out, we got an advantage out here in the West that we do have remote areas, but you take it in the Midwest or something where it's all cities, where are they going to go? I don't even know. I don't even want to think about it. I mean, that would be, Chicago. Where are they going to go?
There's a lot of people that get a hold of me all the time, and they're always asking, well, let's form some place where we can all meet up and stuff. And I've actually got people, like 10, 20 people to show up, and I say, okay, bring your go bag, what you're going to bring, and they don't bring no food and water. It's like, how are we going to survive if you guys aren't bringing any food and water?
Yeah, and you got to think about how you're going to get there, because really, if you lose your transportation, you've got to. That's something to consider. So it's got to be a place where you can get to, but you want it where you just wouldn't have masses of people even knowing about it, or if they did, they couldn't get into it, whatever it is. So. Of course, we got all these old mine shafts and tunnels and stuff out here in the West, and a lot of them's got water in them and that sort of thing. So mainly you'd have your water, but you'd need to have your food there. And,
I've been in a lot of the mines up in Central City and those places in Colorado, and you could fit cities inside some of those big mines in there. They're so huge.
Yeah, that's the thing about the West. We do have that, and here in our area, I've got a property down at Searchlight. We got 19 mine shafts on it.
We just got a couple of minutes left now. Did you want to say anything about your book? I know I got the Kindle version, and I think I'm going to read it a couple more times and take a lot more notes, because it's a fascinating book on EMP.
Yeah, the one you got probably. I did some final edits in the paperback, and it was more grammar than anything. But the I do have it on. It's available actually at Create Space, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It will be in ebook and the paperback both.
Okay, and I'd like to thank you for this chance to talk about your book. It's a fascinating book, and we'll have some links up on our website pretty soon. And I'll get a hold of you in a couple of days by email and let you know what's going on with all this. But thanks again for your time, and thanks for showing up and talking about the book. It's a fascinating book. I think everybody needs to read it so they can get some idea of what's going to happen in the EMP world.
Yeah, that's the thing about the book. It was, I'm hoping it's a little bit of a wake-up call. I don't know if you saw it in the Wall Street Journal, but just 2 or 3 days ago, there was a big article that almost parallels what I say in my book, and it was written by the former CIA director and another gentleman, and they are concerned, have the same concerns I do, on a national level. And
yeah, I read that article by Woolsey, and it was pretty interesting. I've always been a big fan of James Woolsey. He's one of my favorite CIA people. All right, well, thank you very much, Thornton, and I'll get a hold of you in a few days.
Okay, appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I believe in America. My favorite song, America!
Thanks again for listening. This is Shawn Dutton with www.preparedtimesmagazine.com. That's